a secret weakness that will break the U.S. military. The cranes at Norfolk barely moved. Overnight, monitors flickered off across the port. Automated forklifts froze halfway through loading pallets of jet fuel, caught mid-motion like statues. On the command feed, an officer leaned toward his console, tapping the screen again and again. No comms, no satellite uplink. The supply chain feeding an entire carrier strike group had gone blind. At first, everyone thought it was power. Then they realized the generators were fine. The lights were still on. What failed was invisible, the digital nervous system underneath it all. Within 15 minutes, cargo tracking vanished from the Navy's logistics network. Tankers waiting offshore drifted without orders. Every system that ran through encrypted fiber lines simply fell silent. And the worst part, it wasn't an explosion or a missile or a drone. It was code. This wasn't fiction. In 2017, Russia's NotPetya malware froze global shipping networks in less than a day, paralyzing port cranes, fuel terminals, and cargo schedules worldwide. What hit civilian infrastructure back then mirrors what military planners now fear most, a digital strike that spreads faster than any missile, knocking out logistics before a shot is fired. Code placed months earlier, sleeping until someone flips a digital switch. An ambush that doesn't need a gun. The panic spread quietly. Specialists rebooted systems, engineers backtracked through firewalls. The port commander finally gave the order to switch to manual mode, something they hadn't rehearsed in years. Forklifts needed paper manifests. Signals had to be relayed by radio handoff. Delays stretched into hours into days. Somewhere in the middle of it, a chilling realization began to take hold. The world's most powerful military could be paralyzed without a single shot being fired. How does that even happen? How does a fleet worth hundreds of billions lose to a few lines of malicious code? To understand that, we need to step back, not to a battlefield, but to the silent circuits that thread through every modern weapon, ship, and satellite. Because the front line isn't marked by trenches anymore. It runs straight through fiber optics, routers, and server rooms. The soldiers defending it don't wear camouflage. They write code, manage networks, and pray to software updates on time. For decades, digitalization was America's advantage. Network-centric warfare promised precision, efficiency, and real-time control. Weapon systems that could talk to each other, supply chains running at machine speed, and global logistics that made any point on Earth reachable within hours. But as those networks expanded, so did the attack surface. Every satellite uplink, every connected port terminal, every piece of industrial automation became a potential entry point. Inside defense circles, there's a phrase whispered whenever these fractures show too connected to fail. It was meant as a boast once. Now it sounds more like a warning, because if one link goes down, it doesn't just slow a mission, it can collapse an entire chain. That night in Norfolk wasn't a fantasy. It was a simulation designed to test the Navy's resilience. And the results weren't comforting. A single exploited vulnerability in ship-to-shore communications caused cascading shutdowns across 5 interconnected systems. It took 48 hours to bring the port back online. That's 48 hours where a carrier at sea could run out of fuel or missiles mid-operation. The deeper story isn't about one blackout. It's about dependence, the kind that trades redundancy for speed and automation. The U.S. built a digital arsenal so powerful, it forgot that every line of code can be a doorway. And behind one of those doors, someone is always knocking. So before we talk about weapons or enemies, let's talk about the invisible weakness already threaded through the system. Because this isn't a story about future threats, it's a story about what's already inside. The digital arsenal's Achilles heel. Before code began taking down ships, it started with something that looked like progress. The Pentagon's digital revolution was supposed to erase the fog of war. Faster targeting, smarter logistics, complete visibility from orbit to the ground. Every sensor, every radar, every engine reading was linked into a single nervous system. The phrase was efficiency through connectivity. And it worked, until it didn't. Here's the real irony. The same systems that made the U.S. military the most formidable force on Earth also made it completely dependent on software that no one fully understood anymore. Every fuel line, every missile inventory, every cargo shipment ran on code built from decades of patches and upgrades layered on top of each other. It was like constructing a skyscraper on shifting sand, stable until one support gave way. Think of a stealth bomber operation. There are hundreds of moving parts, but only a handful of people see the whole picture. Satellite relay connects to mission planning servers, servers feed encrypted comms to tanker aircraft, tankers get refueling assignments down to the minute. Take out a single data node and the perfect choreography collapses. Crews still have jets, fuel, and weapons, but without network guidance, coordination falls apart. During the Cold War, this wouldn't have been lethal. Back then, systems were designed for disconnection. Commands were transmitted redundantly: radio, courier, backup wire. Ships carried paper charts, and aircraft could navigate without satellite feeds. If a system failed, there was a manual fallback. Now, centralization has become doctrine. The shift to cloud-based mission planning and digital logistics removed friction, but it also erased resilience. Disconnect a base from its network today, and entire operations grind to a halt because physical backups simply don't exist. Industrial control systems, known as ICS, are a perfect example. They control cranes, oil pumps, gate locks, and power relays at ports and air bases. Most people think of cyberattacks as stolen emails, stolen data, crashed websites, pure IT targets. But IT systems handle paperwork and communications. It's OT, or operational technology, that moves physical things. Cranes lifting bombs, pumps filling fuel lines, radar antennae sweeping skies. Many of these OT frameworks were installed decades ago, running on legacy firmware that never expected to face the public internet. When modernization came, engineers added remote gateways so command centers could monitor everything in real time. That small convenience, one digital window, transformed isolated machinery into a global liability visible from anywhere. Intelligence briefings from the last few years describe ICS vulnerabilities as catastrophic by design. In theory, these systems should be protected by layers of encryption and physical segmentation. In reality, cost and convenience have blurred those boundaries. Remote maintenance by contractors requires internet access. Automated updates come from cloud servers halfway around the world. Once an attacker slips in through a compromised vendor or phishing link, they inherit control over machinery never meant to interact with outsiders. You can't overstate the stakes here. If the network breaks, so does command and supply. A battleship adrift can wait for rescue. A fleet without updated coordinates or refueling schedules becomes useless in hours. Every advantage of speed and precision in the military depends on vaporizers when digital threads are cut. What makes this vulnerability extraordinary isn't just technical complexity, it's cultural. The U.S. military was built on compartmentalization, keep operations divided so one failure can't trigger another. Digitalization flipped that logic. Now, integration is the goal. Every branch feeds data into joint networks. Every decision passes through shared systems. The results are astonishing when everything works. Satellite warning ties instantly to missile defense. Logistics software calculates resupply routes in seconds. But total integration means there's no clear line between essential and non-essential systems anymore. If logistics servers stall, combat networks stall too. Colonels now say half-jokingly, "We run on PowerPoint and SharePoint." Behind the humor is truth. The tools meant for administration bleed into mission-critical environments. A vulnerability in a conference system can open pathways to sensitive mission data. The attack surface keeps expanding, not because enemies breach it faster, but because the military keeps giving them more doors to test. For decades, defense strategists assumed the key to dominance was faster modernization, bigger bandwidth, broader connectivity, more automation. But each upgrade added layers, contractors, vendors, cloud partners, until no one person could account for every dependency. The result? A digital arsenal balanced on blind trust. Systems rely on third-party software libraries, some written by low-bid subcontractors years ago. Even intelligence analysts joke that somewhere inside each American weapon system is code written by a person who no longer works for the company that built it. And yet that's the paradox. Disconnecting everything would cripple modern operations even more. A fighter squadron without shared targeting data might as well be flying blind. A carrier strike group without synchronized logistics burns through supplies before reaching open water. Automation turned human error into algorithmic precision, saving lives and dollars, just enough success to hide the rot underneath. The shift toward cloud architecture completed the trap. Cloud servers allow instant scaling. They also create single points of failure. When the Navy moved part of its logistics to a centralized platform, it gained efficiency but lost the ability to fall back on local control. During tests, small outages produced Ripple failures across multiple ports. Each site waited on a remote authentication service to approve every action. When that authorization stalled, nobody could move freight or issue orders. The very thing designed to connect the fleet became its choke point. Even more revealing is how these vulnerabilities evolved organically. No enemy hacked them into existence. They're self-inflicted wounds from the pursuit of convenience. Network administrators streamlined everything for seamless control, but optimization replaced redundancy. The military traded backups for speed and have found itself trapped by its own success. Inside cyber defense circles, specialists still argue about which problem came first, the technology or the doctrine. Was it the engineers who underestimated the risks, or the commanders who pushed digitalization beyond its limits? Either way, both built a system that behaves more like a delicate ecosystem than a fortress. Touch one branch and vibrations travel everywhere. That's why when people talk about a cyber Pearl Harbor, they imagine foreign sabotage. But the quieter truth is that vulnerability isn't imported, it's engineered from within. Each new connection promises control but multiplies risk. Efficiency turns into fragility. And the enemy doesn't need superior tech, just patience and insight into how the system ties itself in knots. So the weakness didn't come from brilliant adversaries. It came from our own architecture, from the belief that software could erase uncertainty. This digital arsenal, powerful as it looks, sits on an invisible edge. Faster, smarter, but one glitch away from paralysis. The greatest risk isn't a lack of firepower, it's that the machine we built to win wars may one day outsmart itself by shutting down at the moment it's needed most. How vulnerabilities got built in. The strange thing about military weakness is that it rarely begins at the front lines. It starts in offices lit by fluorescent lights, in budget meetings, in procurement chains that prize delivery speed over system integrity. The weakness we see now, ports freezing, networks buckling, was soldered into place years ago by the same process that kept the Pentagon running. Every contract came with pressure. Deploy faster, integrate sooner, skip the redundancy because it costs too much. By the time modernization reached full stride, the military's modernization cycle had become shorter than its cybersecurity cycle. Weapons and logistics systems were being fielded before their security architectures were properly tested. There was always a new mission on the horizon, a new threat to counter. Patching vulnerabilities was a secondary task, maintenance disguised as progress. In theory, strict cybersecurity models existed. In reality, commanders faced impossible trade-offs. Choose between operational tempo and technical hygiene. When a system delayed missions, it got bypassed. When new defensive protocols slowed communications, officers switched back to legacy channels. Every shortcut became permanent the moment it worked. Over years, those temporary fixes built an invisible ecosystem of exceptions, each one a doorway left half open. Walk through any naval dockyard today and you'll see layers of digital past living side by side. A crane running on 199's industrial firmware next to a brand new AI-driven inventory hub. They're all connected because they have to be, but the interface between old and new is fragile. The legacy machines were never meant to face the open internet, yet they now depend on remote patch servers and third-party management tools just to function. Each connection adds another potential breach vector. Take the case of certain outdated communication systems still in service, Cisco gateways with known vulnerabilities, Citrix remote access solutions patched too slowly, Schneider electric controllers driving fuel transfer lines. None of these are hypothetical. They're catalog flaws still awaiting complete mitigation. These systems sit at the intersection of operational urgency and administrative inertia, awkwardly keeping commerce and combat readiness alive. When cybersecurity teams finally catch up, new versions are already compromised elsewhere. Inside command infrastructure, engineers call this the patch horizon. It's the distance between known vulnerabilities and the moment organizational bandwidth allows them to be fixed. For military networks, that horizon is often measured in months. An adversary only needs one gap measured in hours. Then there's the human side of it. The people maintaining these systems aren't lazy. They're overworked, under-resourced, and forced to choose between uptime and caution. Every asset must stay operational 24/7. You can't just power down a ship's automation layer or a port's fuel regulator to run diagnostics. So the system keeps running, patched on the fly, carrying the digital equivalent of scar tissue that never quite heals. Modernization plans often read, Like wish lists built on ideal data flows, what they leave out are the beige boxes sitting in control rooms, still humming along on decades-old code because no one dared unplug them. One contractor once joked that shipboard networks are a living museum of software history. The humor fades when you realize each of those relics links directly to mission-critical infrastructure. It's not only a technical issue, it's philosophical. For generations, hardware was king. Tanks, ships, and aircraft embodied national power. Cyber hygiene lived in the background. By the time digital dependency overtook metal and fuel, doctrine hadn't caught up. Maintenance crews understood engines, not firmware. Commanders understood logistics, not encryption. The disconnect broke complacency. Adversaries didn't have to break in through brilliant cyber tactics. They simply walked through outdated digital doors left unlocked by bureaucracy. An unpatched server here, a misconfigured firewall there. Each decision felt small. Permission granted to a contractor for remote maintenance, credentials shared just for the night shift. Over time, those favors knitted into a pattern, a tapestry of trust no one questioned until it was too late. There's a documentation problem, too. When procurement runs through dozens of subcontractors, tracking exactly what code goes into a deployed system becomes nearly impossible. Components get repurposed, firmware repackaged, passwords hard-coded years before current administrators arrive. It's not negligence, it's entropy. Complex systems drift from their creators faster than institutions can retrain to manage them. Even as the Pentagon poured money into AI and automation to close the gap, the underlying issue deepened. Automation doesn't erase old weaknesses, it multiplies them. Machine learning models trained on imperfect data cannot distinguish between legitimate system chatter and a quiet intrusion creeping through an unmonitored port. By delegating oversight to algorithms without understanding their blind spots, agencies believe they're adapting. In truth, they're reinforcing the same dependency that caused the problem. Look at how modernization competes with mission tempo. A deployed carrier group can't afford downtime while engineers install network segmentation. Every hour spent in cyber maintenance is an hour off patrol. So commands prioritize readiness metrics, ships sailing on time, aircraft sorties logged, while cyber readiness becomes a paper exercise. Reports get written, compliance boxes ticked, vulnerabilities tolerated. The logic is brutal. Winning tomorrow's exercise matters more than preventing an invisible failure that might never materialize. This deferred maintenance culture is self-perpetuating. Once vulnerabilities become normal, the institution adjusts around them. Specialists warn about exposure. Administrators file risk acceptances. Everyone assumes someone else downstream has it handled. A perfect breeding ground for quiet decay. What's remarkable is that external audits have been sounding alarms for years. After simulating cyber disruptions at multiple naval facilities, analysts reported that a single compromised credential could cascade across logistics networks within minutes. Recovery times range from 36 to 72 hours. The findings were classified but not surprising. Insiders already knew. What shocked leadership was how routine these intrusions had become. Despite the warnings, the modernization pipeline keeps feeding new connected systems into the same vulnerable architecture. It's like reinforcing an outdated bridge by adding more traffic lanes instead of fixing the foundation. Progress measured in deployment speed hides the technical debt accumulating underneath. Cyber readiness often lags behind kinetic readiness because success is invisible. There's no headline for a port that didn't get hacked, no medal for preventing an intrusion. Commanders are judged on performance metrics they can display: tonnage moved, flight hours logged, sortie rates achieved. Security shows up only as friction. That perception shapes priorities across every layer of command, from IT administrators to admirals. By the time senior officials realized the scope of dependence, the architecture was too entangled to unravel. Disconnecting legacy systems would paralyze logistics, isolating networks would cripple coordination. So the compromise became survival through coexistence, accepting risk as cost of doing business. When people say adversaries exploit American openness, they often mean ideology. But in cyber terms, openness is literal. Exposed ports, outdated encryption, fragmented oversight. Vulnerability isn't planted by enemies. It's grown through routine neglect, fertilized by bureaucracy and accelerated schedules. Adversaries learned faster than the system could reform. They saw that persistence beat sophistication, that patience and reconnaissance cracked fortresses wider than brute. Fourth, But their advantage exists only because the weakness was already there, embedded by people who believed efficiency would always outrun risk. That's the unsettling truth of this age. The attackers didn't invent these cracks. They just followed the blueprints we wrote ourselves, and by the time the military recognized that modernization without discipline builds fragility faster than it builds strength, the network was already too big, too busy, and too interconnected to easily defend. The invisible war already happening. The screen lights don't flicker when an attack begins. There's no explosion, no siren, no trail of smoke. Just small anomalies of slower network speeds, strange logins from anonymous nodes, a printer spitting gibberish at 3 a.m. somewhere behind those symptoms. Someone is already inside the system, mapping it, waiting. That's the invisible war, the one fought in microseconds across fiber lines instead of frontiers. And whether they realize it or not, the U.S. military has been in that war for years. To understand how real it is, look at the pattern of attacks that have already erupted across the world. The 2017 NotPetya incident remains a case study. Malware disguised as a routine software update spread through shipping networks in hours, shutting down terminals, freezing cranes, and erasing data. Maersk, one of the world's largest shipping companies, rebuilt 45,000 PCs and 4,000 servers to restore operations. Ports across Europe and Asia stalled. What made it terrifying wasn't its destructive power, it was how indiscriminate it was. NotPetya wasn't aimed specifically at global logistics, yet it revealed how a single piece of code could cripple maritime supply chains that militaries also depend on. Cyber warfare doesn't always announce itself. In March 2025, a group calling itself Lab Duktigan infiltrated Iranian maritime networks, isolating over 100 vessels from their command centers. Communications blinked out. Navigation systems froze. The operation lasted hours, but it demonstrated a point too few notice. Military logistics are now just as hackable as commercial shipping. The U.S. Navy's infrastructure depends on similar systems, industrial controllers, satellite links, port automation, all vulnerable to the same tactics. For years, American analysts framed these as isolated incidents, accidents of globalization or collateral damage from foreign disputes. But look closer, and the pattern is clear. Every strike tests infrastructure that mirrors U.S. dependencies. Every breach erodes confidence in systems identical to those guarding naval supply routes. The weapons of cyber warfare, ransomware, data wipes, spoof signals, move silently between civilian and military spheres because they exploit the same protocols, the same hardware, the same human habits. Even European ports hit by ransomware in 2022 weren't strategic targets in the traditional sense. They were test sites. Attackers learned that shutting down crane scheduling software delays refueling tankers. Disrupting billing systems traps cargo that includes military supplies. A handful of corrupt bytes in a logistics database can strand ammunition or spare parts halfway to a conflict zone. The cost of writing that code? Maybe a few $1,000s. The cost of the disruption? Measured in millions, and uncertainty. Inside defense networks, intrusion attempts happen daily. Blur between criminal probing, state-backed reconnaissance, and human error. Attribution has become a guessing game. Was that Russian espionage, Chinese data theft, Iranian retaliation, or a cyber criminal renting access from an intelligence group for profit? The ambiguity is intentional. Nations now hide behind layers of proxies and mercenaries, masking strategic operations as random noise across the global web. Every successful breach becomes both a weapon and a smokescreen. While officials debate motive, the tactics have already advanced. Modern cyber attacks rarely aim for immediate destruction. They infiltrate, study, and persist. Malware hides in firmware or cloud containers, awake only under specific conditions, a certain date, a keystroke sequence, an update check. The sabotage may be programmed to trigger when a fleet deploys or a satellite realigns. By the time defenders detect it, the operation underneath may have already shifted to physical consequence, late supplies, frozen communications, a blackout no one can trace to its source. Consider the evolution of GPS spoofing. Once just a nuisance, it's now a strategic instrument. Ships off the Persian Gulf and Black Sea have reported location mismatches of dozens of miles, driven by counterfeit satellite signals. A vessel navigating by those readings could wander into restricted zones or run aground. Maritime cyber experts call it deniable interference, a digital shell that looks like pilot error. That's the new phase of aggression. plausible confusion instead of open conflict. Experts warned that low-cost drones and autonomous systems only deepen the fog. The same AI coordination that makes swarms effective on the battlefield also makes them hackable supply chain vectors. If one compromised device links back to logistics control networks, malware can hop from drone telemetry to mission databases. The more automation commanders trust, the more openings they create for unseen interference. Meanwhile, defenses are uneven. Some bases employ state-of-the-art intrusion detection. Others rely on patched commercial firewalls. Military networks share infrastructure with civilian providers, meaning that a ransomware strike on a port or contractor can echo back into classified systems. The line between secure and exposed depends less on policy than on timing. Who updates first? Who hesitates longest? The invisible war's casualties aren't measured in bodies, but in hours lost, signals delayed, decisions made on corrupted data. During recent joint operations, exercises have revealed quiet failures. Fuel manifests altered, drone feeds lagging seconds behind reality, communication channels rerouted to unverified paths. In simulation, those seconds translate into missed targets and stranded assets. In combat, they mean lives. The unsettling truth is that much of this is already happening on low volume. Security reports quietly record thousands of small incidents each year. Unauthorized access, credential misuse, anomalous downloads. Each one a spark ignored because it didn't set off an explosion. Collectively, they chart a battlefield that never sleeps. The U.S. defends it with cyber commands the size of small nations, yet the attackers are distributed, anonymous, and endlessly patient. When cyber strategists talk about deterrence, they face a paradox. You can't deter what you can't prove. Launch a missile. Everyone sees it. Insert code into a power grid. No one publicly claims responsibility. Retaliation becomes a diplomatic nightmare built on circumstantial evidence. The result is paralysis. Governments respond slowly, cautiously. Meanwhile, adversaries keep testing, recalibrating, waiting for the moment when a live conflict diverts attention elsewhere. This blurred frontier between peace and war creates its own psychological strain. Commanders planning global operations must now assume misinformation inside their own systems. Is a delayed resupply real or staged? Is a weather alert genuine or spoof metadata injected to reroute traffic? The fog of war once came from uncertainty on the battlefield. Now it comes from uncertainty in the code. And that's a chilling realization. The cyber war isn't a future scenario. It's continuous background noise, a low-end hum across every secure line. Every update, every connection, every convenience is another roll of the dice. The U.S. military isn't preparing for this war. It's living in it, even during so-called peacetime. Attackers aren't limited by geography, treaties, or risk of exposure. They operate in milliseconds from apartments, research labs, and rented servers. The real question isn't when the invisible war began. It's whether anyone's willing to admit it's already ongoing, and that the United States, in all its power, is fighting it blind. As data floods from sensors, as systems automate faster than humans can supervise, each quiet breach tests a simple truth. Strength isn't measured by firepower anymore, but by how fast you can spot the ghost hiding in your own machine.